All right, let's now welcome Richard Mamabolo from the Police and Prisons Civil Rights Union to also weigh in on this. Richard, thank you so much for your time. Welcome, sir. So this matter has long been a concern, right, that was actually rebuffed by certain law enforcement entities, saying that there was indeed no fact that foreign inmates actually outnumber locals in jails. But we simply cannot ignore this and the burden it also represents to the state.
No, you're quite correct. Thank you and good afternoon to your viewers. Look, the issue around the spending that our government has to be put through on foreign inmates raises significant questions, especially around the resource allocation, border control, and of course the efficiency of the criminal justice cluster. We have, of course, been complaining about the excessive overcrowding.
All right, it seems like I've lost my guest there, Mr. Richard Mamabolo. He is the PAPRU spokesperson, and of course, we're just trying to ascertain some of the numbers that we are getting in figures according to the local prisons that foreign nationals actually outweigh the number of locals. Richard, are you back with us? Please continue, sir.
Yes, I was saying that, the challenge, of course, has got a lot to do with, the resource allocation, issues around border control, and, of course, the efficiency of the Department of, the criminal justice cluster in its entirety. So we would have preferred that there needs to be some form of a resolution in line with what the Deputy Minister is raising to ensure that, these resources which are spent, which is approximately around 4 billion rands, would have been utilized to ensure that we improve the facilities that we have in the country and ensure that we focus on our core mandate, which is a constitutional mandate of ensuring that there is rehabilitation. So, but as well, we do acknowledge that in addressing some of these challenges, we require a balancing act as it relates to humanitarian obligations and national interest, of course. You would remember that, for example, there are what you call the United Nations Standard Minimum Rules for the treatment of prisoners, which are well known as the Mandela Rules, and of course the Constitution. So we should definitely look into abiding with that as and when we do consider how we can actually alleviate this excessive budget that goes to foreign offenders. Mm-hmm. Now, we have obviously been engaging with the department to look into expediting the deportation of foreign nationals who commit crimes, especially those who are serving short sentences, but as well as obviously looking to negotiating treaties with neighboring countries to allow foreign inmates to serve sentences in their own countries. So that would obviously have to be done by Parliament, the policy makers, which is Parliament in this instance, and we would be lobbying the minister to look into how they can actually look into fast-tracking that process. We think that is the only way we can actually ensure that as and when these inmates are arrested, they are therefore transferred into their countries, because at the end of the day, our process of rehabilitation seeks mainly to ensure that when these inmates are released, they come back into society and become good citizens. So in the case of foreign nationals, the reality is that immediately when they are released, they have to be deported. So why should we then spend all these resources when we know that their rehabilitation is not going to benefit it's not going to benefit our society in any way?
And you know what's interesting, Richard? I want you to comment on this. Is it cheaper then to deport them than to detain them? Because we understand in some cases, which I find very flawed with our current legal system, how can foreign nationals that are undocumented be eligible for bail when you cannot even prove that they do actually have an address? You were talking about the deportation of those that might have short sentences, but we know some of them are still awaiting trial, and we actually don't even have the assurance that they will be attending those particular cases.
Well, in fact, it would be ludicrous to actually release a person without having verified their details as to where they reside, because that would obviously mean that these people might not even appear to the next court sitting. But again, on top of that, I think one of the other challenges is that on a daily basis, like the minister, the committee chairperson has indicated, we spend around 500 on a daily basis for each individual. So it would not necessarily make sense to give them bail, but we think that as well for the efforts that our constitution.
All right, I'm still losing Richard again. Let's see if he can still come back online while we're deliberating the issue of the high number of foreign nationals in our South African jails. Richard, I understand you back. Let's continue with our discussions, please.
Well, sorry about the network. Yeah, I was saying that the main thing is that, it would become cheaper because we're currently spending about 500 on a daily basis for an individual inmate. So deporting them would actually be one of the good decisions to be taken. But of course, this process has obviously to go through parliamentary processes where we can actually form some form of treaties, especially with the neighboring countries, because when you look at the population of inmates, foreign inmates, most of them are from our neighboring countries.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Richard, I mean, just on that with the neighboring countries, let's talk about, firstly, the direct implications of these severely uneven numbers. What challenges do they present to prison officials as well as staff who are your members from conducting their duties? And basically, I mean, the state then needs to firstly accept that we have a serious immigration crisis that has led to undocumented foreign nationals conducting crimes and then being the taxpayers' burden. Trump has just signed immigration orders and said that he would actually tax and even sanction those countries who are not catering for their citizens. And honestly, that's not a bad solution in alleviating the ongoing challenges that are posed by illegal immigration.
No, that's quite correct. I think one of the issues here is that we need to take preventative measures, and one of those would actually be to ensure that we strengthen our border controls. Ineffective border management allows undocumented migrants to enter the country, some of whom may obviously engage in criminal activities. Now, we've always been complaining about overcrowding and understaffing, and that we've had challenges around budget cuts, especially from within the the criminal justice cluster, and that has of course ensured that we have got a declining staff complement while our prisons get more numbers on a daily basis actually. So as things stand, our members are not in a position to actually fulfill the mandate of rehabilitation. That is why you've got a lot of gangsterism within our correctional facilities. But again, we've been speaking to the National Police Commissioner and recently the minister, who is just a new minister, and at least we agree on some fundamental programs that need to be carried out by the Department of Correctional Services. Amongst those is to ensure that our correctional facilities should become self-sustainable. The uniform they produce, the food they eat, the furniture they use should be produced by inmates, and that will obviously keep them busy to ensure that we deal away with the 75% reoffending rate that is currently in place, wherein about 75% of inmates who are released tend to commit crime again because they cannot find some form of economic sustainability after being released. So this would, we believe, in the long term would skill them and ensure that government moves away from the tendering processes where everything has to be insourced, So those are some of the things we're into. But of course, as well, with the alleviation of, or rather with certain treaties that would be taken by government, hopefully soon, to ensure that foreign inmates are incarcerated in their own countries, we will then therefore have sufficient budgets to look into improving all those proposals.
I mean, looking at those reoffending suspects or criminals, then, Richard, I mean, those zamazambas that were just arrested in Stoorfontein are actually being housed in South African jails. At which point does then the state take such matters seriously before it becomes something that they cannot handle?
Yeah, I think that's one of the good examples that demonstrate, because I think over 90% of those who have been arrested in Stoorfontein are foreign nationals. But you also have different other correctional facilities across the country, wherein the majority of the inmates are foreign nationals. So it's something that obviously needs to be expedited, and we are hopeful that government will definitely look into that, because the more it continues, the more taxpayers' money goes into funding these criminal elements. And of course, like I said, the basis of having a correctional center instead of a prison is to ensure that we rehabilitate inmates. And of course, rehabilitation has got it's not an end in itself, but a means to ensure that when these people are released, they come back and serve communities with dignity. So all these foreign inmates would not have that eligibility to come and stay in the country after they have been, they finish their time of incarceration. So it's best to ensure that we then have got such treaties to ensure that they are taken out of the country immediately and serve the rest of their terms in their countries of origin.
Absolutely. Richard, we appreciate your time this afternoon. Mr. Richard Mamabolo is the POP Crew spokesperson there on the large number of foreign nationals at our country's jail.